today. You're the top seed in qualifying here.
Three-set battle takes it on his second championship points.
Born in Lyon, France in July 2003, just 21 years ago, Giovanni Mpetshi Perricard is the new sensation of French tennis. A very reserved character off the court, throughout the last few months, the youngster has given a lot to talk about, showing himself to the world, emerging pretty much out of nowhere to break into the top 60 of the ATP rankings in almost no time. True tennis fans, however, wouldn't have been very surprised. Giovanni Mpetshi Perricard has been one of the best French juniors over the last few years. For example, he reached the Junior Roland Garros semifinals in 2021, losing to none other than his compatriot Arthur Fils, with whom he also won the doubles title in that same event. From a very young age, he was already one of the best prospects of French tennis for the years to come. From 2022 onwards, once his juniors career was over, he started playing professional tennis full-time. Throughout his first year as a pro, he won 2 ITF Futures events in Tunisia. In 2023, he made some great steps forward, to such an extent that he won his first ATP Challenger event in Lyon, Mexico, defeating Juan Pablo Ficovich in the final, in 3 tiebreaks coming from 1 set down. By that time, his projection was already notorious. Therefore, the French Tennis Federation awarded him a wildcard to play his first ever Grand Slam main draw at the French Open in front of his home crowd. While it must have been an insane experience for such a young player, the result was not the one he probably dreamed of and desired. He lost to another Grand Slam main draw debutant, Canaro Oliveri from Argentina, in 5 sets, after being 2 sets to 1 up. Just after his first Grand Slam came his first ever ATP main draw appearance in Sertogenbosch. This time he received no wildcard, but won his chance by going through 2 qualifying rounds. He lost in the first round to Jordan Thompson. His ranking was still not good enough to play ATP main draws, so he continued playing qualifying tournaments and challenger events, winning matches almost every week. This of course gained him a lot of very valuable experience. Towards the end of the season, in Antwerp's ATP 250, Giovanni went through qualifying and managed to win his first 2 ATP matches to reach the quarter-finals of that tournament. His victories were against Roberto Carballes Baena and home favorite David Goffin. He lost to eventual champion Alexander Bublik, but not everything was too sad. With this great week, he broke into the top 200 in the ATP rankings for the first time in his career. By that point, he had already shown himself to the tennis world. His notorious height, being over 2 meters tall, and his one-handed backhand are the first things that will call your attention when watching him play. Then, when you see him serve, you'll be absolutely amazed by the speed and accuracy of those strokes. He can easily serve over 240 kilometers per hour on his first serves, and his second serves are very dangerous as well, as they come like rockets and with a lot of spin. As one would expect by his physique, his playing style is extremely offensive, seeking for winners and trying to close points at the net. Aided by his serve, he even serves and volleys sometimes. Let's be honest though. Unless you are a mega tennis fan or a follower of French tennis, most likely you had never seen him play before 2024. But inevitably, at this point, you most definitely have seen at least some footage of his game, or at least have heard about the great results that he has been having lately. In 2024, he started the year down under, failing to qualify for the first Grand Slam of the season in Melbourne. He lost in the last round of Qualies to compatriot Hugo Grenier in a very tight match. After a few first-round losses in challenger events held in Quimper and Koblenz, Mpetshi Perricard had a very strong week in Nottingham to win the second ATP Challenger Tour title of his career, beating fellow French player Matteo Martineau in the final. Over the following week, he continued playing challenger events without any particularly good results until he traveled to Mexico for a series of 4 challenger tournaments, starting off in San Luis Potosi. On clay but in a lot of altitude, he reached the semifinals where he was beaten by Chilean Matias Soto. The following week in Mexico City, he beat the Chilean in the first round of the tournament, but lost to compatriot Maxime Janvier in the following round. However, the great part would come in the following 2 weeks that were played on hard courts. The first one of the 2 was played in Morelos, where he went on to win the title, only dropping 1 set to Adam Walton in the semifinals. If you look at the scores though, he played a tiebreak in every single one of the matches, except the final against Nicolas Mejia. Nothing one wouldn't expect considering his game style. Finally, during his last week in Mexico, he played the Challenger event in Acapulco, held at the same venue as the ATP 500 event. There, he also went on to win the title, but the results were a lot different. He also lost just 1 set all week, in the first round against an Australian Omar Jasica. But in all 5 matches that week, he did not play a single tiebreak. If anything, this shows the great level he was playing at. He returned back to Europe inside the world's best 125 players. After a few weeks of rest and training training, he came back to competition in Europe. He played the qualifying of a Masters 1000 event for the first time in Rome, where he lost to Grégoire Barrère in the first round. He then played a challenger in Bordeaux, where he lost to Barrère again in the quarterfinals. Eventually, the week where we all got to know him better came. He was awarded a wild card into the ATP 250 in Lyon, not only because of his great performances over the last few months, but also because he is a native from that city. There, he beat Lorenzo Sonego in the first round, passed his second round due to a walkover from Yoshihito Nishioka, and then beat Hugo Gaston, Alexander Bublik, on what was the best win of his career by ranking to that point, and clay court specialist Thomas Etcheverry in the final to lift his first ever ATP Tour title at home in Lyon. As a result, he broke into the top 70, an absolute fairy tale. The fairy tale, however, did not end. Giovanni Mpetshi Perricard has already demonstrated that he is here to stay, and to keep climbing in the rankings. After a tough first-round loss in Roland Garros, in a tight 5-setter against experienced Belgian David Goffin, he switched to the grass, which, judging by his game style, could be a source of some good points for his ranking. And indeed it was. He played his first grass court event of the season in Stuttgart, where he made it through the qualifying draw and lost to Lorenzo Musetti in 2 very tight tie-breaks in his first-round encounter. The following week, he competed in Queens, where once again, he made it through the qualifying tournament, but this time, he also won his first round match against a great opponent. He beat Ben Shelton in 2 sets. Unfortunately, he lost in the following round to local Billy Harris, in what seemed like a winnable match on paper. To this point, it had been a pretty decent grass court season for him, as he had managed to win multiple matches in both tournaments, consolidating his level. I'm sure they must have been very pleased with his team, if they only knew what would come next. Next up in the calendar were the Wimbledon qualies, which he entered as the #1 seed. He beat 2 compatriots in the first 2 rounds, Blanchet and Escoffier, without losing a set. However, in the final round, he lost a very strange match to another French player, Maxime Janvier, in 4 contested sets. Being the #1 seed of the draw and losing in the final round, there was a big probability that he would have the chance to enter as a lucky loser. And he eventually did, following Alejandro Davidovich Fokina's withdrawal due to a back injury. As a result, he obtained the opportunity to play Sebastian Corda in the first round, who he incredibly beat in a great 5-set match. In the second round, he easily defeated Yoshihito Nishioka in 3 sets, and in the third round, he beat Emile Roux-Suvuori in 4. Just like that, he made it into the 4th round of a Grand Slam for the very first time in his career. In the 4th round, he had to play Lorenzo Musetti, who he had already lost to a few weeks earlier in Stuttgart. This time, he managed to snatch a set, winning the first one by 6 games to 4, but then lost the following 3 by 6. This was the end of an incredible tournament that will drop him around the 45th spot in the ATP rankings, which will of course be his best so far. Now the question is, what is the ceiling for this young man? His growth as a tennis player over the last few months has been incredible, so one can't avoid thinking what his ranking might be at the end of the season, or even at the end of next season, once he has already competed in the main tour for a complete year. The truth is that having so much success all of a sudden at such a young age might sometimes be a bit shocking for the players and affect their performance. But Mpetshi Perricard has Emmanuel Planck in his box, who is one of the best tennis coaches in France and is responsible for the development of many of the great French players that emerged over the last couple of years. Therefore, having his guidance will most definitely help Giovanni not get lost and keep working towards the right direction. Consequently, it is only a question of time until we see what his true potential is. Don't be surprised if he is one of the next big names in the ATP Tour. If you enjoyed today's video, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss any of the upcoming ones. See you soon for a new one.